Hi everyone! We are going to look at point of view today and how it affects narration. The point of view is all about the narrator. You need to look at narration to determine it, and remember that point of view is only referring to the narrator's point of view. It does not include dialogue. There are 3 points of view: first, second, and third person, and we'll be looking at the differences between these, starting with first person point of view. In first person, the narrator is in the story and refers to himself or herself, using words like I, me, we, us, our, or my. First person can bring the narrating character to life by allowing us to hear how he or she speaks and thinks. Here's an example from an Agatha Christie book. It says, 5 a.m. I am very tired, but I have finished my task. My arm aches from writing. A strange end to my manuscript. I meant it to be published someday as the history of one of Poirot's failures. Odd how things pan out. So the use of the word I is a dead giveaway for first person narration. Second person point of view is rarely seen. It's almost never used in literature. The second person is when the narrator says you and puts the reader directly into the story. And when it's used correctly, the second person point of view makes the reader an active participant in the story. Here's an example. You have friends who actually care about you and speak the language of the inner self. You have avoided them of late. Your soul is as disheveled as your apartment, and until you can clean it up a little, you don't want to invite anyone inside. So you can see that use of you as in the narration, and that is the marker for second person point of view. Next, third person point of view is when the narrator is telling a story about other people, using words like he, she, him, her, they, them, their, or using characters' names. And there's 3 types of third person narration. There's the omniscient narrator. And if you think about omniscient, it means all-knowing. So the omniscient narrator knows everything about the characters and events in the story and has privileged access to the characters' thoughts, feelings, and motives. So they can reveal the thoughts and motivations of multiple characters in the book. Here's an example in a Jane Austen book. Elizabeth, having rather expected to affront him, was amazed at his gallantry, but there was a mixture of sweetness and archness in her manner, which made it difficult for her to affront anybody, and Darcy had never been so bewitched by any woman as he was by her. He really believed that were it not for the inferiority of her connections, he should be in some danger. You can see in this example that both characters' thoughts and feelings are revealed, their inner thoughts, and this is a marker for third person omniscient narration. The third person limited narrator varies from this because it's confined to what's experienced, thought, or felt by a single character, sometimes a limited number of characters, but usually just one character. The limited narrator doesn't know what every character is feeling. So let's look at this example. It says, this Anselmo had been a good guide, and he could travel wonderfully in the mountains. Robert Jordan could walk well enough himself, and he knew from following him since before daylight that the old man could walk him to death. Robert Jordan trusted the man. Anselmo, so far, in everything except judgment. He had not yet had an opportunity to test his judgment, and anyway, the judgment was his own responsibility. So you can see this third person limited narrator is limited to Robert Jordan. We can see his thoughts about Anselmo, but as far as Anselmo itself goes, we do not see his thoughts. We only see what Robert Jordan observes about him. Then we have third-person objective point of view. You can think about this as a journalistic style of writing. It's really like reporting what you see around you. So the objective narrator can only tell you what can be seen or heard. They can't know anyone's thoughts or feelings. So here's an example. The American and the girl with him sat at a table in the shade outside the building. It was very hot, and the express from Barcelona would have come in 40 minutes. It stopped at this junction for 2 minutes and went to Madrid. So you can see that it is a reporting kind of style. It's telling readers what is happening, the who, what, where, but it really allows readers to interpret meaning for themselves. The narrator is not inserting meaning, he's just reporting what's going on. So here's our review. The point of view is all about the narrator. There's 3 types, first, second, and third. First person uses words like I and me. Second person uses words like you. The third person uses words like he, she, or him. The third person omniscient narrator is all-knowing and can reveal the thoughts and motivations of multiple characters. The third person limited narrator is confined to what is experienced or thought by a single character. And the third person objective narrator can only tell you what can be seen or heard. They cannot know anyone's thoughts or feelings. So let's look at some examples of these and see if you can guess which one's which. Here is an example from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. I had called upon my friend, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, one day in the autumn of last year and found him in a deep conversation with a very stout, florid-faced, elderly gentleman with fiery red hair. With an apology for my intrusion, I was about to withdraw when Holmes pulled me abruptly into the room and closed the door behind me. So, what do you think this one is? Is it first person, second person, or third person? If you look at the pronouns that are used, you can see that word I, and that's a dead giveaway for first person narration. And a side note is that first person point of view is often used for autobiographical writing, personal essay, or memoir. But in this case, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was using it for fiction, so it can be used that way too. Here's another point of view example. Lily shivered and sobbed while sitting alone under the tree. Jacob felt a pang of pity for her, and though he worried what the others might say, he walked to her, sat beside her, and offered her his jacket. So if you examine this passage, we see that we can look at Jacob's feelings. Those are told in the story, but we can only observe what's happening to Lily. So this means that this is third person limited. We only have limited access to the thoughts of a character. Next, let's look at this one. Lily shivered and sobbed while sitting alone under the tree. Jacob gazed at her, his stare suggesting pity, and his lips tightened as though he was debating something of importance. He gave one timid glance back at the others, and then walked boldly over to Lily and sat beside her and offered her his jacket. So this one, we're not really privy to the thoughts of the characters. It's only giving us details that an observer could see. And so this means that that's third person objective. Next, Lily shivered and tried unsuccessfully not to sob while sitting alone under the tree. She was more embarrassed and miserable than she had ever been. Jacob felt a pang of pity for her, and though he worried what the others might say, he walked to her, sat beside her, and offered her his jacket. Now this one you can see that it says Lily felt embarrassed, so we are hearing her thoughts, and also that we're seeing what Jacob's feeling. He feels pity for her. So this means that we have access to all the characters' thoughts, and this makes this third person omniscient. So I think that, oh, here we have one more, sorry. You're about to begin reading Italo Calvino's new novel, If on a Winter's Night a Traveler. Relax, concentrate, dispel every other thought. Let the world around you fade. And again, if you see this pronoun you being used like that, you know that is second person. So as you're reading texts, you can examine them and figure out what kind of narration, what point of view they're coming from, because this can affect the impact the story has on readers, the way that readers interact with the text. So I hope this helps, and if you have any questions, you can ask me.